Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it for a moment. What if one of the most important things influencing your long-term health after the age of 50 is something you don't feel, don't see, and probably don't think about on a daily basis? Not something dramatic, not something that forces your attention, but something quiet, persistent, and constantly present in the background of your body. Because most people believe that serious conditions develop suddenly, that one day everything is fine and the next day something goes wrong. But in reality, the process is almost always gradual. It builds over time, often without clear warning signs. And one of the most important processes behind that slow change is something called chronic inflammation. Now, before you dismiss that as just another health buzzword, I want you to stay with me, because this is where things become very real. Not theoretical, not abstract, real. Over the years, working with patients and studying long-term health patterns, one thing becomes clear. Chronic inflammation is not just a minor issue. It's a foundational process that influences how your body functions at the most basic level. And what makes it especially important after 50 is that your body naturally becomes more prone to it. Not because something is wrong, but because your internal systems shift. Your immune system behaves differently. Your recovery processes slow down, and your body becomes more sensitive to the patterns you repeat every day. Now, here's where most people misunderstand inflammation completely. They think of it as something obvious. Swelling, pain, redness, something you can point to and say, that's inflammation. But that's only one type. That's acute inflammation, and in many cases, it's actually helpful. It's your body responding to injury, protecting you, repairing tissue. That's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is something very different. Something that doesn't hurt, doesn't swell, doesn't demand your attention. It simply exists in the background, quietly influencing how your body functions over time. This is what we call low-grade chronic inflammation. And the reason it matters so much is because of what it does at a cellular level. Your body is constantly renewing itself. Cells divide, replicate, repair. This process happens millions of times every day, and for the most part, it works remarkably well. But when your body is in a constant state of low-level stress, that process becomes less precise. Not dramatically, but enough to matter over time. Small inconsistencies begin to appear. And while your body has systems in place to correct those inconsistencies, those systems also depend on balance. When that balance is disrupted, even slightly, your ability to maintain stability decreases. Now let's talk about why this becomes more important after 50, because this is where everything starts to connect. As your body ages, it naturally shifts into a slightly more reactive state. Your immune system becomes more sensitive, but also less efficient at resolving inflammation once it begins. This creates a situation where your body can remain in a low-level inflammatory state for longer periods of time. And because there are no obvious symptoms, this often goes unnoticed. But over time, this state influences how your body functions in very real ways. It affects how your cells communicate. It affects how your body repairs itself. And it affects how effectively your system can maintain balance. This is why lifestyle factors that may not have had a noticeable impact in your 30s or 40s begin to matter much more after 50. The same habits, the same patterns, but a different response. And this is where awareness becomes powerful. Because once you understand that your body is responding differently, you can begin to adjust your habits in a way that supports that change rather than working against it. Now, here's where I want to shift your perspective slightly, because this is where most people get stuck. They think the solution to inflammation must be complex. Expensive treatments, complicated routines, drastic changes. But when you look at the research carefully, something very different appears. The most powerful ways to influence inflammation are not extreme. They are consistent. They are built into daily habits. And they work because they align with how your body is designed to function. This is why small, repeated actions often have a greater impact than occasional large efforts. Your body responds to patterns, not what you do once, but what you do every day. And when those patterns support balance, your system begins to shift in a noticeable way, not overnight, but steadily. And that steady change is what creates long-term results. Now let's move into the first major area where you have direct control over this process. And this is something that influences your body every single day, whether you think about it or not: the way you eat. But I don't want you to think about this in the typical way. This is not about dieting, restriction, or following a rigid plan. This is about understanding how different types of food interact with your body at a deeper level. Because every time you eat, you are not just consuming calories, you are sending signals. signals that either support balance or slowly push your body toward a more reactive state. And what makes this especially important after 50 is that your system becomes more sensitive to those signals. Foods that your body could process easily in the past may now create a different response when consumed regularly. And again, this is not something you feel immediately. It's a pattern, a gradual shift that builds over time. When your diet is built around highly processed foods, refined sugars, and inconsistent eating patterns, your body is constantly adjusting. It never fully settles into a stable rhythm. And when that happens, it creates a background level of stress that becomes part of your baseline. But when you shift toward a more balanced pattern, one that includes whole foods, natural fats, fiber, and consistent timing, your system begins to respond differently. Not because you've done something extreme, but because you've removed the constant disruption. And this is why consistency matters more than perfection. It's not about getting everything right. It's about creating a pattern your body can rely on. Now let's go deeper into what that actually looks like in practice, because this is where most people need clarity. When you hear phrases like eat more whole foods or reduce processed items, it sounds simple, but it doesn't always feel actionable. So let's break it down in a way that actually makes sense. Your body responds best when it receives nutrients in a form it recognizes and can process efficiently. That means foods that are closer to their natural state. Vegetables with color, because those colors represent compounds your body uses to maintain balance. Healthy fats, like those found in olive oil, nuts, and certain fish, because they support the structure of your cells and how they communicate. Fiber, which helps regulate how nutrients are absorbed and how your system maintains stability. And when these elements are present consistently, your body begins to shift toward a more balanced state. Not because of any one food, but because of the overall pattern. And what's important here is that this does not require a complete overhaul overnight. Small adjustments, repeated consistently, are far more effective than sudden drastic changes, because your body adapts gradually. And when those changes are sustainable, they become part of your routine rather than something temporary. Now let's talk about something that many people underestimate, even though it may be one of the most powerful factors in how your body manages inflammation: movement. And I want to be very clear here, because this is where a lot of people get discouraged. This is not about intense workouts, strict exercise programs, or pushing your body beyond what feels comfortable. In fact, those approaches are often not sustainable and can even work against you if they are too extreme. What we're talking about here is consistent, moderate movement, the kind of activity that your body can maintain day after day without strain. Walking, for example, is one of the most effective forms of movement you can do, especially after 50. Not because it burns the most calories, but because of how it influences your internal systems. When you move consistently, your muscles release signaling molecules that help regulate inflammation throughout your body. These signals act as a kind of communication system, telling your body to maintain balance and reduce unnecessary stress. At the same time, movement improves circulation, helping deliver oxygen and nutrients more efficiently. And this combination creates an environment where your body can function more smoothly. What makes this so powerful is that it doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. 30 to 45 minutes of moderate movement most days of the week is enough to create a meaningful shift over time. And when this becomes part of your routine, your body begins to expect it, adapt to it, and benefit from it in ways that go far beyond what you see on the surface. Now let's talk about something that many people underestimate, even though it may be one of the most powerful factors in how your body manages inflammation: movement. And I want to be very clear here, because this is where a lot of people get discouraged. This is not about intense workouts, strict exercise programs, or pushing your body beyond what feels comfortable. In fact, those approaches are often not sustainable and can even work against you if they are too extreme. What we're talking about here is consistent, moderate movement, the kind of activity that your body can maintain day after day without strain. Walking, for example, is one of the most effective forms of movement you can do, especially after 50. Not because it burns the most calories, but because of how it influences your internal systems. When you move consistently, your muscles release signaling molecules that help regulate inflammation throughout your body. These signals act as a kind of communication system, telling your body to maintain balance and reduce unnecessary stress. At the same time, movement improves circulation, helping deliver oxygen and nutrients more efficiently. And this combination creates an environment where your body can function more smoothly. What makes this so powerful is that it doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. 30 to 45 minutes of moderate movement most days of the week is enough to create a meaningful shift over time. And when this becomes part of your routine, your body begins to expect it, adapt to it, and benefit from it in ways that go far beyond what you see on the surface. Now let's talk about something that ties all of this together: patterns. Because your body does not respond to isolated actions. It responds to what you do repeatedly. And this is where many people unknowingly create the very conditions they are trying to avoid: inconsistent eating, irregular movement, poor sleep patterns that vary from day to day. Each of these on its own may not seem significant, but together, they create a system that is constantly adjusting, never settling into a stable rhythm. And over time, that becomes your baseline. This is why so many people feel like their body is unpredictable. One day feels fine, the next doesn't, without a clear reason. But when you look at the underlying patterns, the reason becomes clearer. Stability comes from consistency, not perfection, not extremes, but repetition. The same supportive actions done regularly, allowing your body to adapt in a predictable way. So here's what I want you to take from everything we've covered. Your body is not working against you. It is responding exactly to the patterns you give it. And after 50, those patterns matter more than ever, because your system is more sensitive, more responsive, and more dependent on consistency than it was before. This is not something to worry about. It's something to understand. Because once you understand it, you gain control over something that once felt unpredictable. You begin to see that small changes, repeated consistently, can create a completely different outcome over time. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. And that steady change is what builds long-term stability. So instead of focusing on doing everything perfectly, focus on doing the right things consistently. Support your body with balanced nutrition. Move regularly in a way that feels natural. Prioritize sleep as a key part of your routine. And most importantly, create patterns your body can rely on. Because when your body knows what to expect, it functions at its best. And that's where real change begins.